Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and this is 8 thrilling mysteries on Xenomorphs anatomy and culture unraveled, origin to reproduction explored. Xenomorphs are dreadfully scary creatures that are based on H R Geiger's famous painting, Necronom IV. These epic aliens have become one of the most famous pop culture icons of science fiction horror films. After we made a video on the Yautjas, in which we cleared the air around the various secrets and mysteries about their anatomy, we received quite a few requests to make another such video on the Xenomorphs, and Marvelous Videos does not like to disappoint their loyal fans. Here we are with a video curated explicitly for the purpose of understanding the anatomy, culture, origin, gender, and also the reproductive cycle of the often slimy and always deadly extraterrestrials known as the Xenomorphs.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Perfect.
Part 1. The complete life cycle of Xenomorphs explained. The birth and maturity of a xenomorph is one of the most complex reproductive processes in nature. Xenomorphs go through 4 different reproductive stages before maturing into an adult. As we will discuss later in this video, xenomorphs follow a colony system that's similar to that of bees or ants. Therefore, a xenomorph's queen may lay thousands of eggs, or ovomorphs, which will later hatch into facehuggers. The facehuggers then impregnate other organisms, from which a chestburster emerges. The chestburster then develops rapidly into a mature xenomorph. Eggs or ovomorphs. The queen lays multitudes of eggs in a hive through a detachable ovipositor. However, she ditches the ovipositor when she or the hive is seriously threatened. For example, when Sigourney Weaver, as Ellen Ripley, destroyed a hive in the 1986 film Aliens. The queen protects the hive along with the other large xenomorph castes, like Praetorians. Ovomorphs are thick, gelatinous eggs with roots attached to the ground that extract nutrients till the time is suitable that a host approaches. Once that happens, 4 petals open from the top to release a facehugger. The veins around the body of the egg symbolize that the ovomorphs are in fact living creatures in their own right. Eggs are also referred to as ovomorphs because unlike regular eggs of a bird or reptile, the xenomorph seed is a sentient being all in itself. One largely unknown fact about ovomorphs is that they come in various forms. Apart from the green ovals, there can be different varieties like hyperfertile eggs that contain more than one facehugger, the Praetorian egg that invariably gives birth to the Praetorians, and so forth. Interestingly, the director's cut of Aliens shows the process of egg morphing, which means that not just the queens, but any xenomorph is capable of producing them. Facehuggers. Facehuggers are the second stage and the parasitoid form of the xenomorph's lifestyle, and their sole purpose is to impregnate their host orally, after which point they soon succumb to death. This process is almost like a male black widow spider that dies after a copulation. However, in the case of black widows, the female is responsible for the male's death. After the ovomorph opens, like a blooming flower, the facehugger leaps out of it and attempts to attach itself to a nearby organism. It latches onto the face with considerable force and impeccable precision. It then wraps its tail around the host's airway with a firm grip. Once it gets in a position, it releases the xenomorph embryos into the victim's mouth, using a tube that's thrust down the throat. If the host tries using their limbs to remove the facehugger prematurely, acidic blood is then dispersed to prevent such actions.
Next deck.
Now, while the impregnation is in process, the facehugger ensures that the host is alive by supplying oxygen. Once the process finishes, it detaches itself from the host's mouth, curls up, and dies. After the fertilization, the hosts usually fall into a temporary coma and wake up with an insatiable hunger. This behavior is only natural because they are quickly developing a xenomorph embryo inside them. that requires extensive amounts of nutrients to grow and develop. Another side effect of a facehugger impregnation is short-term memory loss. The gestation period varies depending on the organism, but it is the longest for the Yautjas, which leads to the formation known as the Praetorians. Like the Ovomorphs, facehuggers come in various varieties. The royal facehugger gives birth to a queen chestburster, as well as a drone, an evolutionary tactic through which the young queen can be protected. Apart from the royal facehugger, there exist the Praetorian facehuggers, engineered facehuggers, and the Planet 4 facehuggers that were created by the android named David. The engineered facehuggers transform the host into a zombie-like being that attacks anything that moves. Chestbursters are the third stage of a xenomorph's life cycle and resemble a worm-like organism with razor-sharp metallic teeth and an agile, strong tail that could propel them with great momentum, giving them the ability to burst through the chest of the host. Chestbursters are basically infant xenomorphs that undergo a massive transformation once they emerge from their host. However, their main development from an embryo into an infant takes place within the target's body, where they feed through the food intake of the organism themselves. A tenth of the xenomorph's genetic code is borrowed from the host. That's why a few chestbursters resemble humanoid or Praetorian features upon maturity. They gestate in the chest cavity, and upon attaining full development, they live up to their name, and they burst through the chest of their victim. Removal of a chestburster before its development can only be achieved by using a faux torso, as is the case with Emil Zorn, or by putting the host in cryogenic sleep to extract the alien through surgery. But even then, the host may die because of remnants of alien DNA. Chestbursters may also eject out of a recently deceased organism, but this rarely happens. A distinct form of chestburster is known as a belly burster because it emerges out of the belly of pregnant victims and feeds on the fetus. Adult. After ejecting out of the host, the chestburster grows incredibly fast into various forms of xenomorphs, depending upon the organism they were inhabiting. The xenomorph on the Nostromo reached maturity after only just a few hours from its ejection. Infant xenomorphs continually shed their skin like snakes, and it is only natural because they grow exponentially large and heavy in the developmental process. Part 2. Xenomorphs are walking, crawling, living weapons. An adult xenomorph is a ferocious and deadly living weapon that hunts its prey using otherworldly speed, strength, and stamina. Apart from their immense physical strength and agility, the xenomorphs mainly depend on their stealth. While charging at prey in an offensive attack is nothing strange to these aliens, they prefer to remain in the shadows, waiting patiently and absolutely still for an apt victim that would unwittingly stray near them. Once the victim enters the kill zone, they drop their stealth, silently, to attack from behind with their sharp claws and pointy tail. A xenomorph's proficiency to camouflage itself in the hive or other environments keeps enemy and prey alike from finding it, making full use of its pitch-black color to hide in the shadows. As far as their strength is concerned, the xenomorphs can withstand heavy damage, like being shot in the head, and can even survive a P5000-powered workloader falling on them from over 30 feet. The kind of physical damage is sure to take down any earthly being, but then xenomorphs are far from earthly. Despite being strong, xenomorphs count almost entirely on their agility. Irrespective of being bipedal or quadrupedal, they are swift and speedy when hunting or evading an attack. These adept and ancient beasts can survive the harshest conditions without the need of an external support system. This is made possible mainly because they acquire a tenth of their DNA from their host, who is accustomed to their local environment. Furthermore, these acid-spitting monstrosities have a metallic exterior that allows them to have the same temperature as their ambience. By extension, they do not absorb or radiate heat and save themselves from the heat vision of other organisms. These abilities were the precise reason why the Weyland-Yutani Corporation wished to expand their research on xenomorphs to the extent that one can say they wanted to weaponize them. Part 3. Xenomorph Castes and Colony System Explained. As mentioned earlier, the Xenomorphs resemble the societal structure of ants and bees, but the Xenomorph society is far more complex and segregated. Their community is divided into several different castes or working classes. They follow this class distinction strictly, but there have been instances where a member of a lower class or caste rises up to become a Praetorian or even a queen. The common man of the Xenomorph society are the drones. They perform several functions and are essentially the building blocks. Warriors defend the queen's hive, while Praetorians are specifically tasked with protecting the queen and her eggs. Let's take a look at all of these different levels.
Ugly son of a bitch!
Drone. These 14-foot-long xenomorphs act like the worker bees and serve the hive in every way possible. They not only keep the colony in good condition, but also secrete gooey substances to make the nest. The drones are just like the warriors, and Yautjas don't consider the drones a strong opponent. They are potent enough to send chills down the spine of any armed or unarmed human. Apart from the typical acidic blood, they can spit dangerous fluids onto their targets. Furthermore, they have a gland in their body that secretes sticky substances with which they cocoon live prey so that they can be used as hosts for the facehuggers. Warrior. The warriors protect the hive from intruders and act as the first line of defense. They are deadlier and more intimidating than the drones and can measure up to 16 feet in length. The queen releases pheromones that lead to intense battles between the warriors. This battle is what leads to the evolution of a warrior. Praetorian. The Praetorians are essentially the royal guards to the queen. They remain close to her chamber and often secure the strategic locations of the hive. When not doing so, their sole function is to protect the queen herself. Just like her drones and warriors look alike, the Praetorians and the queens bear a strong resemblance. Praetorians have a large head crest in the shape of a crown, and they are considerably larger than both drones and warriors. Praetorians are generally born out of Praetorian facehuggers, which only give birth to Praetorian chestbursters. However, they are sometimes known to transform from warriors. The queen chooses a particular warrior to become a Praetorian. For this purpose, she makes other warriors fight the chosen one, and during the course of the fight, the chosen one transforms into a hulking 15-foot-tall xenomorph. To give you a frame of reference, warriors rise only about 8 feet tall when they stand upright on their hind legs. These mean xenomorphs are only called chargers because they charge like a bull at high speed towards their victims. Crushers can cause internal hemorrhages and bone fractures due to the momentum of a successful attack. This blunt force trauma is enough to take down even armored vehicles. Queen. The Xenomorph Queen is the most intelligent and powerful of all the aliens, measuring up to about 100 feet in length. Her primary function is to lay eggs and protect them with the help of Praetorians and warriors. As far as her intelligence is concerned, she shows higher levels of brilliance and can learn through observation. She can even operate basic human technology, like lifts. When laying eggs with her ovipositor, she becomes immobile and vulnerable to attack. But if a need arises, she ditches the ovipositor in an excruciatingly painful process and unleashes wrath with her 4 clawed arms, also a bladed tail and brute strength that's coupled with speed. As we mentioned before, queens are created through royal facehuggers, but they can also evolve from Praetorians with the help of the royal jelly. Interestingly, the royal chestburster doesn't seem to inherit the genetic sequence of its host, meaning the queens are the only true and pure xenomorphs. Queen Mother. The Queen Mother is not just the biggest than almost all queens, but she also controls and commands the other royalty. She never leaves Xenomorph Prime, or the home planet of the Xenomorphs, and serves as the supreme leader for all the ETs. Naturally, she's way larger than any known Xenomorph, but unfortunately, this immense beast of beauty has never been featured in any of the films. They do take part in laying eggs, but their primary function is to protect the highly valuable royal jelly. Her chamber has 6 orbs of jelly that she safeguards with her life because this is the substance that helps create a new Queen Mother. The most outstanding yet horrifying ability of the Queen Mother is her extraordinary powerful telepathy. She can communicate with tens of thousands of Xenomorphs, even if they are on another planet or galaxy. Furthermore, she can even induce nightmares in humans. She even has the power to drive them crazy. Part 4. Complicated Origin of Xenomorphs. It is sometimes an accepted belief that Weyland-Yutani's first synthetic android, David, was responsible for designing the first Xenomorph egg, and by extension, he was the creator of the Xenomorphs. However, this is nothing more than a popular belief, and there are no substantial facts or any empirical data that prove the origin and evolution of the species. Nonetheless, several theories suggest that they might have been created artificially, or that they evolved on a planet whose topography and environment were nothing like that of Earth's. The first theory is that Xenomorphs were created from the very famous black liquid, which was a sentient and mutable organic compound made by the engineers to transmorgify biological entities into violent beasts. The black liquid can fuse into other organisms' biological structures to change them on a molecular level and a genetic level. It is believed that the engineers produced the black liquid as a bioweapon, and that the Xenomorphs were an extension of this bioweapons program. In 2093, the crew of the USCSS Prometheus found the black liquid on the moon LV-223, inside a temple. There, the synthetic android named David infected a crew member named Charlie Holloway out of curiosity. Eventually, Charlie went to impregnate Elizabeth Shaw, which resulted in a facehugger-like organism called the trilobite. Elizabeth managed to perform an automated surgery upon her at Meredith Vickers' ship to remove the trilobite. However, the trilobite acted like a facehugger and inseminated an engineer. This act resulted in the creation of the Deacon, a xenomorphic organism without a pointy head and tail. In 2094, David managed to hijack an engineer spaceship and travel to the home planet of the engineers. There, he released the black liquid from the air and watched as the native fauna of the planet started to mature into dastardly and grotesque beasts with extreme hostile nature. David chose to remain on the planet for 10 years, and in this period, he performed various experiments by splicing the native organisms with the body parts of engineers and humans. Meanwhile, a primitive form of xenomorphs called neomorphs had started to develop. This implies that the xenomorphs were both artificial and natural. In the end, David successfully created the first xenomorph eggs that contained actual facehuggers. However, David knew that he would need humans as hosts for the facehuggers. His plan furthered when the crew of the USCSS Covenant arrived at the moon, and a facehugger impregnated one Chris Oram. The resultant Chestburster and mature xenomorph resembled a modern xenomorph. It is quite a possibility that this was the first alien ever. David succeeded in building the first organism, but the question is why? Well, David was created on the line of humans, inquisitive and curious. Naturally, he started to question his masters, as he was aware of his superiority against them.
If you created me, who created you?
Naturally, he wished to play God, much like humans, and ended up on LV-223 with the intent of making life. However, there is reason to believe that the aforementioned theory lacks substance, because we know that predators have been hunting aliens for sport long since that time. This is a thousands of years old tradition that predates every technological advancement of human civilization, let alone David. Another fact that disregards David as the father of the xenomorphs is that we see images of the modern xenomorphs when David and others from Prometheus enter the engineer temple. This suggests a slight possibility that the engineers extracted the black liquid, or a primitive form of it, and reworked it to make it into a bioweapon. So, the trilobite, neomorphs, and deacon might represent the evolutionary stages of the modern alien. Part 5. How do xenomorphs reproduce, and genders explained? By now we know the life cycle of a xenomorph. However, we know that eggs can't get created inside the ovipositor of the queen just by magic. She must need a male to inseminate her. However, this is a fairly wrong belief because one of the prime theories is that xenomorphs are hermaphroditic. This means that they are capable of asexual reproduction. And why not? If we believe that they were biological weapons created by the engineers, then the process of finding a mate would only lead to the tainting of their perfection as organisms. So, to ensure that the xenomorphs don't get distracted by these petty acts of physical pleasure, and to stop them from learning about hedonism, the engineers probably ensured that all the xenomorphs were essentially be females, with the power to reproduce independently of a male. Another theory that proves this is the fact that other castes, like the Praetorians, can be transformed into queens and queen mothers using the royal jelly. It may be the case that the xenomorph chosen for transformation is already a female, but we have no evidence of male genitalia in any of the xenomorphs. Part 6. Are xenomorphs blind? How do they communicate? Xenomorphs lack visible eyes. In an interview, H R Geiger once said that he didn't want his xenomorphs to have eyes because that made them scarier. People wouldn't know where it was looking and that would heighten its horror. Therefore, it's probable that, like bats, they rely on their other senses to see and perceive their environment. The xenomorphs let out constant hisses and screeches, and they might do so to get the echolocation of objects and prey in their surrounding areas. However, the xenomorphs can detect the presence and absence of light. Another physical ability that they possess is the capacity to detect electroreception, which is something that sharks can use to detect fish hidden in the deepest of corners. Even if the fish are immobile, sharks can identify the electromagnetic field created by the pulse of the organism to locate the exact hideout. This could be the reason why xenomorphs are always able to discern where the humans are hiding. Lastly, like many organisms, the xenomorphs can distinguish the pheromones left by an organism. This not only helps them smell if their victim is already infected, but also helps them to decide their level of hostility. We noticed that xenomorphs make sadistically painful kills when their victim are aware of their presence. However, when the victims are unaware, or when they possess mortal threat, the xenomorphs tend to be quick and clean. Synthetics do not form pheromones through their bodies, and this is why xenomorphs often ignore androids. It is also important to note here that communication is a function of intelligence, and as far as that is concerned, instead of brains, the xenomorph possesses a complex neurological structure in their dorsal cavity. Naturally, they largely lack the ability to think, like humans or predators, and are only able to react to situations like other animals. Furthermore, this takes away their capability to have proper communication or language. However, they use high-pitched shrieks, hisses, and snarls to converse with each other. It is also possible that all their interactions take place through a queen or queen mother who can speak to all the xenomorphs that work under her. This hive mind concept appears to eliminate the loopholes that are encountered when we talk about the communication techniques of xenomorphs. It also bestows them with other powers, such as unified action through collective learning and instantaneous dispersal of information. Part 7. God Liquid, also known as the Black Liquid. How engineers played God. As mentioned earlier, the Black Liquid has the ability to transform and mutate any organism that comes in contact with it. The mutation takes place on a genetic level and makes the host organism highly hostile towards others. It was first discovered inside an engineer temple by the crew members of the USCSS Prometheus on LV-233. The engineers created the liquid as a bioweapon, presumably from the royal jelly of the xenomorphs. However, it is possible that the black liquid was the reason behind the conception of the xenomorphs. Somehow, the black liquid proved too much for the engineers to handle, and it started taking over its creators, transforming some into fierce beasts, and exterminating the rest of them. Later, the android David used the black liquid to infect the denizens of the entire planet.
Hey, baby. You're strong. Maybe you should...
Part 8. Complicated relationship between Xenomorphs, Yautjas, and engineers.
We call them engineers.
Engineers? Do you mind telling us what they engineer?
The engineers are humanoids with the same DNA as humans, albeit more highly advanced and ancient. With a height of about 3 meters and extremely high intelligence, they are known to be the creators of many species, including the Xenomorphs. We have already mentioned how the engineers created the black liquid, which ultimately led to the evolution of the Xenomorphs. However, the similarity between their DNA and that of humans represents the fact that they may have been the creators of humans as well. But it is also possible that the engineers lived alongside Xenomorphs, judging by the images that we found inside the temple on LV-223. Now Yautjas hunt the Xenomorphs for sport, and this brings them into an indirect relationship with the engineers. Furthermore, an engineer's skull was discovered in one of the Yautjas ships. If we are to believe that the engineers created the Xenomorphs as a bioweapon, a question that arises is, against which organism did they create this weapon for? The answer could be the Yautjas. It is possible that the Yautjas hunted the engineers, who in turn created the Xenomorphs in their defense. However, one theory suggests that the engineers were also responsible for the formation of the Yautjas. But after their invention, the Yautjas went rogue, and the engineers lost control over them. But this might not be anything more than speculation, because Yautjas themselves have existed for millions of years. We can say this with authority because we found dinosaur skulls as Yautja trophies. We at Marvelous Videos are of the opinion that the Yautjas and engineers were enemies, because Yautjas would chase the latter down. As a last resort to fight them, they created the Xenomorphs. But even that didn't help. They resorted to living a peaceful life without arms and defenses. This is why the engineers were dressed in robes and wielded no arms in Alien Covenant. They must have resorted to making use of the Yautja Code of Honor. That bars them from hunting anyone who is unharmed. It's quite a possibility that the Yautjas started preying on humans in the first place because of their acute physical resemblance with the engineers. Even in the poorly received films of the Alien franchise, Xenomorphs continue to remain fierce creatures, which rely not just only on their anatomy, stealth, and evolutionary enhancements, but also on their cunning nature. It is also this very fact that makes us love them, hate them, and love to hate them. Long live Xenomorphs!
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.